How much do you need to know about the history of Middle-earth to enjoy Middle-earth? Honestly, not tons, but a little bit helps. If you're a new or infrequent traveler in Middle-earth, it can be tough to keep everything straight. It seems like everything is connected. You've got this sword that was found by this guy that originally belonged to this other guy and it's here now, but it came from this city thousands of years ago, and so on. So what does it all mean when Legolas says, "a Balrog of Morgoth"? Or Aragorn sings a song about an elf maiden? Or even simpler, what does it mean when a character says they're living in the Third Age?
The Third Age of this world.
How far back does this whole thing go? Well, strap in. I'm about to open up the fire hose of lore.
Open wide!
A little bit. I'm not going to turn you into a Tolkien scholar or anything, but I'll show you a lot of connections and anecdotes that'll at least get you to go, huh, cool. In this video, I'll sketch out for you a basic timeline of Middle-earth. I'll help you get your bearings a bit, and then I'll show you why it all matters by relating it to a character you already know. This guy. What a looker. Aragorn's story touches on most, or at least many, of the most important bits of Middle-earth's history. So while it's nice when he gets the girl at the end, it adds an extra layer when you know that the girl is his cousin. Wait, what? Yeah, true story. But we'll come back to that. Let's start with some basics here. What is an age in Middle-earth? The Lord of the Rings takes place at the end of the Third Age, which means there must be a first and second, right? Right. We're going to quickly go backward through the three ages and then work our way back to the time of the Lord of the Rings. Here we see the three ages laid out with how long each was. Now, there's plenty of dispute about the actual length of the first age, and if the Tolkien scholars still watching want to throw their expertise around in the comments, that's fine. We'll get there in a bit. But let's start here. In Middle-earth, an age ends when there's a world-altering, cataclysmic event. So, when the ring is destroyed and Sauron is effectively killed, that counts. And that makes Aragorn the first king of Gondor in the Fourth Age. But Tolkien didn't write much at all about the Fourth Age, so we don't really need to worry about it either. The Third Age began when the Second Age ended, which was again at Sauron's fall, and you know some of that story already. What you may or may not know is that Sauron wasn't always the Dark Lord. He used to be a lieutenant of the original Dark Lord, Morgoth. More than just an immortal being, Morgoth was essentially an evil god who tormented and tried to rule Middle-earth throughout the First Age, and well before that as well. And it was his downfall that ended the First Age. The start of the First Age, like I said before, is disputable, but for our purposes today, we're going to peg it to about 600 years before its end. This is when the sun rises for the first time. Before that, light came from two divine trees in the Undying Lands, and before that, from giant lamps at two ends of the earth. And with that bit of info, we can start working forward again through time. See, the history of the First Age is basically the history of light. There were giant lamps, and Morgoth destroyed them. So the gods made the two trees, and Morgoth destroyed those too, this time with the help of Shelob's even eviler mother. Before that though, one elf was able to create three perfect jewels that captured the light of those trees, and those jewels were the Silmarils, and Morgoth stole them too. When he did that, a huge faction of the elves chased after him, swearing never-ending war until they got the Silmarils back. And the day they made it to Middle-earth from the Undying Lands is the first day the sun rose in the sky. We're not going to go through all the events of the First Age, don't worry. This is just so that you understand that when people talk about reading the Silmarillion, they're talking about the history of the war for the Silmarils. So, without going through the entire history, how about a couple fun connections? One of those elves who chased after Morgoth was Aragorn's grandmother-in-law, Galadriel. I told you he'd factor in. So, to say that Galadriel is old would be a massive understatement, and she spent much of the First Age as a sort of apprentice to the Queen of Doriath, an ancient elf kingdom deep in a forest that's protected by magical spells. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's very much a proto-Lothlorien. And one more Aragorn connection in the First Age. Aragorn and Arwen's story bears a lot of resemblance to that of Beren and Luthien, a mortal man and an immortal elf who fall in love. They go on adventures that frankly make the Lord of the Rings seem tame by comparison. And together they break into Morgoth's stronghold and steal a Silmaril from his crown. There's death, adventure, true love, and a whole lot of history that does repeat itself in the Third Age. So now you know why Aragorn is so interested in that story he tells the hobbits while they're on the road to Rivendell.
'Tis the Lay of Luthien.
The First Age ended when the other gods stepped in and Morgoth was finally defeated. And the destruction from that final battle between gods is so severe that an entire continent is destroyed and sinks into the sea. In fact, if you look at a map of Middle-earth, you can see a mountain range in the west that's split right through the middle. That's where the Grey Havens are, by the way. Anyway, those mountains didn't used to be split, and they were on the eastern edge of a land where most of the First Age takes place. Pretty cool. Okay, now we're in the Second Age, and if the First Age was all about light, then the Second Age can be summed up in another single word: Numenor. You might recognize that one.
The blood of Numenor is all but spent, its pride and dignity forgotten.
At the start of the Second Age, we've got these twin brothers, Elrond and Elros. They're both half-elven and half-human. Their father, by the way, is Elendil, whose light is captured in the phial of Galadriel that she gives to Frodo. And seriously, this is the problem with Middle-earth. It's easy to get sidetracked by all these connections. Okay, back to the twin brothers Elrond and Elros. They're given a choice. Do you want to be counted among men or elves? We know where Elrond ends up, right? But his brother chose to be counted as a human, so he's now mortal. But he's given a gift of long life and lives for 500 years. For most of that time, he's the first king of Numenor, an island that's been created in the wake of the destruction at the end of the First Age. Numenor is an incredible place, and its chapter is probably my favorite in the Silmarillion, but for now, all we need to know is this. Through the Second Age, Numenor becomes the most advanced nation the world has ever seen. Scientifically, artistically, nautically, militarily, you name it. This, of course, leads to pride, which, as always, cometh before the fall. I won't tell you why or how because you should go read it, but the Númenóreans begin worshipping the fallen Morgoth and make war on the gods. Numenor is then completely destroyed along with most of its people, but a small, faithful remnant flees to Middle-earth where they establish the kingdoms of Gondor in the south and Arnor in the north. The leaders of those Númenóreans are people you know, Elendil and his sons Anarion and Isildur, which brings us back inevitably, of course, to Aragorn and the Third Age. You already know that Aragorn is a direct descendant of Isildur, and you get why he's troubled by that connection. But now maybe you can start to understand the unbelievable weight of history that he's working under. He's the rightful heir to an ancient kingdom that rose and fell in equal parts glory and infamy. He's battling for the rule of Middle-earth against a demigod who has been a bane on his house and countless others since time began, literally. He's also in love with an elf princess who's seen as the successor to the most famous and beautiful elf who ever lived. And on top of all that, she's the daughter of the most powerful elf lord in Middle-earth, who also happens to be the brother of Aragorn's ancestor. So, are Aragorn and Arwen cousins? Yes! But by my count, after 6,000 years, it's 66 times removed. So I think we're good in this case. And besides, what kind of royals would they be if they didn't marry their cousins, you know? Now, we skipped over a ton of stuff, especially from the Second and Third Ages, and we can't get to everything, obviously. But how about one more fun connection? The Third Age lasted just over 3,000 years, and lots of stuff happened during that time that sets up the adventures in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So here's our example. Why does Merry's attack work on the ultra-powerful Witch King of Angmar? And what the heck is Angmar anyway? Well, Merry's great and all, but it's his blade that matters here just as much as him. He got that blade from the Barrow Downs just outside the Shire. The Barrows are the last resting place of the Lords of Arnor, which was the kingdom in the north, and which was at war with Angmar, the stronghold of the Witch King. So the smiths in Arnor wove magic spells into their blades specifically so they could penetrate the Witch King's defenses. That was all around here on the timeline. Fast forward through the centuries, and now Merry is wielding exactly the right blade at the right time for the right purpose. And stuff like this happens all the time in Middle-earth. Pay close attention when you read The Lord of the Rings, and you'll see the word chance a lot. Something happens as if by chance, or it's more than chance, or what have you. But Tolkien didn't spend 17 years writing The Lord of the Rings or his entire adult life creating the larger mythology to leave things to chance. He very much was the guy at the board with the pushpins and the string tying everything together. And we've barely scratched the surface in this video. But I ask again, do you need to know all this stuff to enjoy the story? Definitely not. But if you enjoyed this video, let it propel you to find more of these connections. Part of the joy of these stories, for many of us, is digging into those details, getting some background, and seeing these connections. It's fun, it's pleasurable, and sometimes it's downright transcendent. Check out this video that I made a few years ago about a connection I only made after 20 years of reading. For now though, pat yourself on the back. If you made it this far, you've now got a solid grasp of the ages of Middle-earth. If you want to learn more, then take the plunge into those appendices. Grab a copy of the Silmarillion that you can dog-ear and mark up. And of course, most importantly, like and subscribe to this channel. All right, thanks for watching everybody. I'll see you next time.